Trusty big screwdriver is just holding that plate that Chuck made for me, that heat shield. I've neatened up the corners there so it fits in the frame nicely, and now I'm just going to mark where I need to mount these P-clips on the back end, and then once I've screwed those in place I'll do the same at the front. Some additional insulation on the upper side of my heat shield. That will just bolt on top, and there it is in place. One heat shielding, I don't know, wiring tray deposit thing. It's a real pain in the ass to get in there, thanks to my glamorous assistant, because I needed 3 hands on these clamps. These were a little too small, those were a little too big, as you can see, so I've drilled some other holes in there and that did the trick. All good for the wiring to sit. Suitably modified for the expansion tank tubing, we hope. So today's all about taping. We've used some of that flex tape, which I don't know if you can see, it's got a kind of carbon fibre look to it. And that, in theory, is going to hold that mesh in place, we hope. Certainly doing a good job from the front. And then just going to stuff something in there to push that flat, and then we put the cover in place. Yes, it's a little block of wood, beautifully sanded to be the perfect fit. Just going to do some final markup and trimming and tidying up of this cover, because it needs to be creased here but flat there, so that's going to be fun. And I've got about 1 mil all around the edge that I need to just tidy up on that wheel of mine. As you can see, you know, just needs a bit tidying up. Visible evidence of the fact that the tape doesn't work. It's stuck to the sides very nicely, but because there's some spring in the mesh, and obviously only partial surface for it to stick to, it's released its grip. This tape never does what it says it's going to do, so that's annoying. I'm not sure what to do next. I think what I might do is one side at a time, bondo it and then tape it, and then when the bondo's set, do the other side. I'm going to try that. This is hardening up nicely, and despite the fact it's tempting to do the other side, I'm going to err on the side of caution and patience and wait until tomorrow. Well, that worked beautifully, and of course I didn't wait until the next day. Did it 2 hours later. With my new bottom for the airbox, I've drilled some preliminary holes, and I think what I'm going to do is actually rivet it, so I'm probably going to do another hole in between those two, keep them nice and even. But that's the final solution. In between time, what I'm going to do is screw it down, having put some bondo filler all along these edges, and then I'm going to fill in all the little gaps that remain, so I'm going to screw it down as tight. And then once the bondo's set, I will rivet it in, because rivets are cool. The idea is that screwing it down will squeeze the filler out, and then I can clean it up at the edges before it goes hard. As long as I don't put too much hardener in, which I usually do, and it usually goes off in about 5 minutes. And then, not sure about this gap here. Gonna need to bend the metal a bit, and maybe just tape that edge to keep it nice and flush as possible. We shall see. As usual, overcooked it a bit, I have to say. Too much hardener. In fact, I think the bondo is probably about 3 years old, so I should probably get some new stuff because it's already kind of stodgy before you start, which is not really ideal. But stage 1 is kind of complete. This is coming along nicely now. I think I might fill in that factory crack too at the same time. This needs sanding down, obviously, but we're getting there, and it's all sealed up nice and neat. Might even do the riveting next. Yeah, I was trying to avoid painting white again, so I didn't have to mask off the grill, which, you know, at the end of the day could be white. It's really not going to be very visible, but I don't want to keep it metal. So the rest of it's kind of ready for paint, because again, all this stuff's going to be hidden, and as long as it's all sealed and relatively smooth, we're good. So I think I'm going to do the rivets first. So I'm going to do them one at a time. I'm going to start down here, rivet that, see what happens, because it might not work. Meantime, the final coat of white on this, just because there was a little mark here, which is now gone. So then I'm going to try that satin. Lovely jubbly. Alright, painting. Not sure if I like the satin finish. Have to see it in the daylight. The only trouble is it runs like Usain Bolt, so I should have put it on a little gentler. So I've got some runs to clear up there. Apparently bondo doesn't bond, which is quite annoying, so I'm going to have to work out another way of actually resealing that little edge there. Maybe some of that crazy tape. Anyway, having destroyed the airbox, obviously I need to, well, not obviously, but it's mounted at the front, and the brackets were part of the old plastic, which I've now taken out. So I've marked in there where they need to be that way, and then they need to be inboard by whatever that is in inches, which, yeah. So anyway, it's about 17 mil, 18 mil. Because they attach to these here, either side. Don't actually need to know what it measured, because I'm just going to use the calipers. Drilled the hole out, taking into account the size of the bracket, so the hole needs to be there. Resorted to super glue and a G clamp, or a C clamp, but it's more of a G clamp, guys, honestly. This episode entitled Coming Up for Air, the title of a book by a very famous author, and also a song by a not so famous punk band. So if you can name both, the band and the author, you get some freebies. So, from Russia with Love to Brutale Radiator trim, for want of a better word, which now I have to work out how I'm going to actually fit them, because they've got holes there and there's no bolts there. Well, I have a cunning plan. Oops. First thing is to obviously paint them, so I sanded them down, and then find some bolts. And thanks to my $10 selection, I've got various lengths which I can use. Can you see that? Oh, anyway, there you go. There you go. So now it's just a question of mounting the nut onto the flat surface. So I've marked the radiator up, and normally this would involve welding, which would involve my friend Adam. And if this all goes horribly wrong, it will. There is always my good friend JB Welds, so I'll give him a go first, because he's less aggravation. Actually, he's not. So having cleaned up the surface and marked the area roughly, I've put the JB Weld in place, and then I'm just using this to line them up before it sets. We'll see. Painted with the new extraordinary technique. Got some new fancy clips today, various sizes and shapes and types, because as you can see, these worm things are useless. This is unscrewed now, but it's still tight. Just rubbish. I'm just reviewing what I need to do here. I really want to kind of protect all that stuff if it's going to stay. So I need some kind of shield for that. And then I'm reviewing the rear sets, which I bought when I ditched it. That kind of doesn't go with the look. I can live with the aluminium because that looks rather nice. And these rear sets are really good, actually. They're an improvement on the old gear shift. Still not quite as sweet as it is on the Ducati, but definitely better than the standard. So I'm thinking I'll probably refit the original because that lines up perfectly. Oh, there we go, that boy. But obviously it's the wrong colour and very scruffy, so do something about that. I feel some painting coming on. Painstakingly sanded out all those little runs of that satin lacquer. Luckily they came out fairly easily, so I think what I'm going to do is give it another hit with the white, honestly, and then not actually sand that down so it's a little bit rougher, for the satin finish to grip to better. See how that goes, because that's what I did on the airbox and that kind of turned out quite nice. So that's the plan, but not today. Turns out the fuel tank's exactly the same size as me, so this old t-shirt came in handy to protect it. Job done. So now I've got to work out what I'm going to do about this. I think I'm just going to have to try and paint that section. Having had a little look around, I think I've worked out at least how to mount whatever guard I'm going to put over these electrics, especially this guy. It just looks so fragile. So luckily, at the bottom of the sump, there's a couple of holes there. I don't know what they're for, because nothing was attached to them. So I can certainly put those bolts in there, and that way it will come from under the sump, protect this, and I can mount it off the side stand bolts with some extension bracket of some description, and nothing at the front though, which is a bit worrying. I don't really want to hang it off any of these because they all look a bit serious. Yeah, maybe one of those will do the job, but food for thought. Time to get cutting some templates, I think. Obviously held in place by the gear shift and the bolt. The start of the template. It's very tedious, this process. Getting there, but it's going to be complicated, and there's possibly an easy solution to this, which is a belly pan, which I had considered already. Not sure, I can't use the original one because that just kind of hung off the bottom of the fairing, although obviously it's the right shape. It was very low as well. So I'm going to investigate Brutale, which is the other MV Agusta with the same motor. I'm not sure if the mounts are going to work, but maybe before I invest in 250 bucks worth of belly pan, I can get an idea with a spare part that I found on eBay, just the left hand side. Now I'm looking at the foot pegs on this side and thinking about recycling the original heat guard, but I'm thinking that went on the next piece of the exhaust up here somewhere. If you use that hole, it kind of looks a bit crap, honestly, but I kind of like that, especially if I shaved off the top bit a little bit and obviously filled the holes in and drilled some new holes to fit there. Kind of like that. Let me Photoshop that and show you what I mean. Totally random, but that brake cable was worrying me, and the back end of the mudguard kind of roots that and holds that in there. If you think about it, the way the wheel rotates, that's going to take care of a lot of stuff. Obviously, rain isn't a problem in Arizona because we haven't had any all year. But, you know, you get the gist. And it's kind of cool to have no mudguard, and I might put one on later. I don't know. Don't get much mud around here. Anyway, final white paint, at least on this. Still some paint in this, but I don't know, it started farting out the can, so you can finish it off properly. Haven't finished painting the tank yet, but I did get this reproduction MV Agusta fuel cap, so going away from the fancy 3-prong spin-off thing. This is a lockable one as well. Just to make life even more awkward, because nobody steals fuel, do they? That was the 1970s. Anyway, it looks rather nice. Yeah, good product. Rip off, obviously, but nice. Ooh, there's a drip. That needs sorting out. And a hair. What a surprise. Here's that seat frame back from Adams, beautifully joined in with those new pieces there. And here it is with the seat in place, not covered yet. That fits beautifully. And that's going to be the backlight in there, the brake light, somewhere, somehow. Nice. Just slotted everything into place, nothing bolted down, just to see what it kind of looks like as it coming together. Kind of like it. Coat of primer and first coat of that metallic dark black kind of oiled bronze, I think it's called, and the old gold ready for clear coat. I decided to stop fighting with these and buy these ones, which were supposed to fit bigger forks, but they don't, so we've had to introduce some persuasion, which involved my initial idea and some modification of those intercooler hose bracket things, clips. It's a bit of a fight, but we got there. That's those in place now and all tightened up, ready for the rest of the assembly to be coordinated. But that's the actual milled aluminum rod with tapped screw thread in it, a solid rod, so that's cool. Back down here, I decided, just because it was ridiculously cheap, to buy the belly pan from a 2005 Suzuki Hayabusa. None other than. And actually, it's a good starting point. It comes just far enough forward to leave the exhaust there, but kind of protect that ridiculously fragile little electric. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of development here, but it's better than starting from scratch, honestly. As I say, even if I just use it as a guide eventually and build off it roughly and then create a piece from that, which is probably the route I'll have to go. Might even do some fiberglass. Back up here, got the seat painted now, seat frame. So I'm going to start really working out exactly where all that battery and ECU is going to be mounted, because can't really hang it out there. There's the ECU, and there's the battery still, because I remember now I have to pass it up underneath. So I'm going to have to disconnect it all, disconnect the tray again, pass it up underneath, get it in place, work out what wires, cables are going to go where, then bolt the tray up, and then we're good to go. We're all in position now, but it doesn't quite match up, which is really annoying. So there's two things here. Firstly, the battery is just ever so slightly wider than the tray, so I can cut out the lip, which would seat it another, well, that much. What's that? 3/4 inch down, which would do the trick, or I could just find a smaller battery, which would do the same trick. But given this is fairly standard size battery, I think I'm going to work on cutting out the lip. Tedious, but not drastic. Pretty sure I measured all this before, but see, I knew that carbon fibre splitter rod cover would come in lovely handy, and it has. There it is. How cool is that? And there's that inset to cover up the wiring in the front. It's obviously not quite in place. Something like that. There it is, yeah. And there's the bracket, which obviously needs modification because that's a mile off. I've got another idea. Not going to use that bracket. However, cutting that ridge out to allow the battery to sit, half an inch lower, has done the trick with the battery. And now I'm looking at this, and it would be really nice if I did the same at the other end, because I'm thinking I've got to take the cable over the top, and then we've got this horrible angle. If I did the same the other end, these feet would stick right under that edge, and that would give me another inch. I'm going to try that. And then if that doesn't work, I've got another one of these, so I'm going to cut it an inch longer as well. That'll give me 2 extra inches. And at this point, although there's a lovely paint job, obviously, this is kind of becoming a test piece. So I'm totally prepared to screw it up, get some more feet, no problem. Yeah. Not quite the desired effect, that whole back end came out, but it gives me an idea of what I've got to do. So there's that inch overhang that I was talking about. And that's comfortable, and actually some room for relays and stuff, because there's a lot of relays and stuff. And then there's a plan B. Turn the ECU round. So that cable's now coming in at the back because we've got plenty of cable. And that fits quite nicely. I've actually settled on this configuration, turning the ECU around the other way, for lots of reasons, because it works, and also that holds it nicely in place. It looks tight, but it's not, so that's what I'm going to do. Anyway, enough of that, and onto the soft underbelly, or the Agusta underbelly. So, as usual, paper template, tin snips, glass of wine. Meantime, in terms of productivity, I'm putting the final coat, hopefully, on the fuel tank. Ironically, in the dog feeding room, which is ironically possibly the least hairy room in the house. Looking good. So, although having offered it up, I want to kind of come down to there. Kind of don't, because that's an ugly-ish shape. So I'm going to go halfway, see what that looks like. So I'm glad I went gently Bentley with that, because that's kind of what I'm looking for. Gonna flatten that off a little bit, but not too much, because it's basically hiding and protecting that. And I might even scoop out that so it shows that circle in its entirety. Well, it's interesting. Might look bloody awful, but if you don't try, you never find out. First sign you've done some damage to yourself is blood on whatever you're cutting. So turn off now if you're squeamish. It's alright, no missing fingers. It is a bit of flesh wound. To the final-ish version, and I'm going to bolt that up and then see how I'm going to mount everything. Obviously this is not the final thing, but it'll give me an idea of what it's going to look like and if it's going to work at all, honestly. To be honest, I've given up on this at the moment, because there's just nowhere at the front to mount sensibly and securely that Agusta belly pan, unfortunately, because I like the shape. It kind of fitted. And so I've just given up on it at the moment, and I've protected all that wiring a little bit more. Not pretty, I know. But that said, I'm hoping to get the radiator back tomorrow, so I can get the whole cooling system back up and running. And although I've ordered a gasket from the UK, ironically, for the crankcase, if that doesn't arrive soon, I'm going to go with what the guys on the forum suggested, which was just to use some of that red goo stuff that I used, so I can get the thing up and running again, because that'd be exciting, right? I want to hear the exhaust. I want to know what it sounds like. It's probably going to be crazy. There, that's a better protection job that even the Sopranos would be proud of on an Italian bike. Oh, it's looking a bit Borg again for you Star Trek guys. It's what we call a right bloody mishmash. How cool is that? And on that note, after a double feature last weekend and an extra long version this weekend, I think we'll call it a day for now, and we'll catch up next week. hopefully I've got this sorted out by then. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you stayed the distance this time, and if you haven't already, please subscribe below.